Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel, and today we're going to be looking at the rest of the cards revealed that are going to be in the Wild Force and Cyber Judge set over in Japan, except these cards are all going to be in Temporal Forces. I think there's going to be another set that's coming out in Japan in February, so there's going to be even more cards in our new Temporal Forces set in March, but these cards are going to still be in the set. We did get another new ACE SPEC card revealed. We got a new Torterra EX, some pretty interesting supporter cards, and some new stadiums that look kind of cool too. I'm excited to get into it. I will, of course, leave a link down below to PokeBeach if you want to go check these cards out yourself. And if you're new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below so you never miss an upload, and leave a like on the video if you want to enjoy. Let me know what you think of these new cards down below. So let's get into it. We got a lot of things we got to scroll through here before we get to it, but yeah, the entirety of the new set has been revealed, and we can start off here. We do have some new Roselia and Rose Raids, which I don't think we've already seen before. Nothing too special. They're just, if they get damaged, if they're knocked out, your opponent's active is poisoned. There is a new stadium coming out that does work with poisoned Pokemon, so we're going to look at that very soon, but I'm sure y'all are here for the new Torterra. So there's a new Turtwig with 80 HP. Rest in peace. It doesn't work with Buddy Poffin, but it does take 20 less damage from attacks, so it theoretically has 100 HP. There's a new Grottle, and then there's the new Torterra EX. Now, Torterra EX is really cool because I haven't really seen a Torterra rule box card in quite some time, so it's about time we got one. And keep in mind, there is the Brilliant Stars Torterra and Grottle that do exist in the format that you can play with Torterra. Its main attack here, Forest March for 1 Grass Energy, does 30 damage for each of your Grass Pokemon in play. So if you have a full board of Grass Pokemon, I think you're doing, what, 180 damage for single energy. This card could be kind of good if, like, Cheryl was existing when this card was around. Cheryl will be rotating by the time this card comes out. If Cheryl existed when Torterra was in the format, this card could have been okay. I mean, 1 for 180 on a 340 HP Pokemon is pretty good. Now, there is a brand new ACE SPEC we can look at that might make Torterra a little bit more playable. It's a shame this card isn't super fantastic, though, because Torterra is a really cool Pokemon. It does have an attack that is 150 and does heal 50 from it. Keep in mind, it is, 340 HP. It is a very tanky Pokemon, and it does have a decent, Torterra One-Prizer and Grottle you can play. So if you want to play, like, a Grass Box deck with Torterra, you could get away with something with Grottle, because there is a Grottle that lets you search out Grass Pokemon from your deck. There has been a synergy there. We'll have to see, though, where that ends up going. But Torterra, for the most part, it's a fine card. It's not great. It's not bad either. But it is about time we got another Torterra Rule Box Pokemon, because it's a pretty cool Pokemon. There's a new Shaman here that has Pinpoint Dive, doing 60 damage to one of your opponent's bench Pokemon EX or Vs. I mean, Manaphy exists. Probably not the greatest card ever, but you know what? It does exist nonetheless. New Heatmore here. I don't think we've seen this yet. Licking Fire does 130 damage. You flip 3 coins for each tails, discard an energy from this Pokemon. Pretty risky attack. Nothing too crazy. We are at, like, the end of the set release here, or the end of the cards getting revealed. So most of the cards we haven't seen yet are not going to be, like, spectacular or anything like that, for the most part anyways. There's a new Centiskorch Charming Breath for 2 fire, says 180. If your opponent's active isn't burned, this attack does nothing. If there's any burn effect in the format, 180 for 2 isn't bad on a One-Prizer. We've already seen all these. New Sharpedo here does have the attack where you flip 3 coins for each head, discard a random card from your opponent's hand, does 50 damage. So very similar to the Strip Bear Sharpedo from way back in the day. It doesn't do the exact same thing, but being able to disrupt your opponent's hand is kind of fun. Discard a random card from your opponent's hand is kind of cool. If you can flip 3 heads, you can discard 3 cards. You flip 2, you're discarding 2. Could be an annoying card. It doesn't do a lot of damage, though, but it's a fun little, like, meme troll deck. This could be a fun one for sure, because getting rid of cards in your opponent's hand is obviously not a bad effect. New Frostmoth here. Freezing Cold does 100 damage. During your opponent's next turn, the defending Pokemon can't attack. Not spectacular, but, in a deck where, like, they don't have very many switching options, maybe this could be good. I don't know. Like, against Charizard, I guess. New Palafin here is pretty interesting. We haven't seen this yet. It does have Vanguard Punch, which for 1 water energy does 130 damage, and then this Pokemon does 10 damage to itself for each damage counter already on it. So, if you have 14 damage counters on you, you take 140 damage. Now, the nice thing with Palafin is it probably isn't going to take a lot of damage, to be honest with you. I don't think this card is, like, anything too crazy in terms of, taking a ton of damage because it's got 150 HP. It's not like Palafin sitting there sponging hits all day long. 1 for 130 is okay, but probably nothing to write home about, right? So there is that, right? New Azumarill here, nothing too crazy either. This new Bronzong we got revealed, though, is pretty interesting. So it does have the attack Evolution Jammer, which for one Psychic does 30 damage. Your opponent can't play any Pokemon from his or her hand to evolve his or her Pokemon during his or her next turn. Now, this Bronzong could be pretty good against Charizard. Now, you're probably like, well, you gotta wait a turn to evolve. What if you just go second against Charizard and they just turn to Rare Candy? What are you gonna do? Well, leave it at that. There is a new supporter card in this set, which we're gonna look at very soon, that might be really good with this Bronzong, and keep that in mind. This new supporter is kind of interesting. So when we get to the new supporter, we'll see Bronzong could be good, because obviously it's not going to be great against those big basic decks like Roaring Moon and Raging Bolt and Gouging Fire and all that stuff. But against stuff like Charizard EX and any other evolving deck, and there are evolving decks do exist in the format, this could be a pretty interesting attacker to make your opponent not be able to do much in the game. We've seen most of these cards here. New Golurk here, you can take a look at. It's got Iron Defense, flip a coin, if heads during your opponent's next turn, prevent all damage done to it. You got Fighting Fist, which for 4 colors energy, does 120 damage, and if your opponent's active as a V Pokemon or an EX, you do 240. So it's a nice way to slay basic EXs and Vs. It does require 4 energy, though, which is a little costly. So I'm not super sold on it, obviously. New Mudsdale here, Mudstock for 1 fighting. Attach a basic fighting energy from your discard pile to each of your bench Pokemon. It's okay. It does combine nicely with a Drillbur, which we will be looking at very soon, but I don't think the Mudsdale is very playable. A new Colossal here is interesting. It's got Gatoline Tar, which for 1 fighting does 40 damage, and this attack does 80 more damage for each fire energy on this Pokemon. So if you technically have a reversal energy on this thing, I think you're still going to be doing a lot of damage. This does work with reversal energy, keep in mind. Nothing too crazy. It does have Craigalanche, where you get to mill the top 2 cards of your opponent's deck. So that's kind of nice, having the extra attack. Could be interesting, discarding the top 2 cards. Could be annoying for the opponent. All in all, not a terrible card by any means. New Arbok, Panic Poison. Your opponent's active is now Burned, Confused, and Poison. That's very interesting. Keep in mind, we got Arbok EX in the meta, but again, not the craziest card on the planet. Nothing too good there. New Midiana, not as good as the other one at all, just with Kick Away here, switching your opponent's active to the bench. Yeah, nothing too crazy. We've seen that. We've seen the Moon, the Raging Bolt. New Noctowl here with Talon Hunt for a DTE, does 70 damage. You may search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them in your hand. So one of those cards and one of those attacks lets you get 2 cards when you attack with it. It's okay. Being able to get cards out of your deck can be nice. Obviously, you can get punished by a Judge or an Iono, so probably not the most playable card ever. Maybe a Noctowl control deck could exist. I don't know. Probably not, but there is some food for thought. Sometimes getting 2 cards out of your deck can, it can lead to some pretty cool plays. That's all I'm going to say. But I don't think Noctowl is really going to cut it, to be honest. New Chatot, something crazy. A new Cinccino here is interesting. It's got Special Roll for 2 colorless energy, does 70 damage. This attack does 70 more damage for each special energy on this Pokemon. So if you're going to play this within Lugia and you just pile a ton of special energy on this Pokemon, you could be hitting some pretty insane numbers. I mean, with 4 special energy, this thing does 280 damage, right? Because you got 70, 140, 210, 280. Could this be a good partner to play in Lugia? Maybe. It is a very sturdy Pokemon. Or, yeah, it's very fragile. It's not like this Pokemon is going to survive a hit. You're going to use, all those special energy, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, my Cinccino's dead. Could be an interesting card, though, in a Lugia deck, because being able to do, 280 damage is kind of insane. On a 1-prizer, that is very interesting. You can put, gift energy on it and stuff. So, I don't know. It's an interesting attack. Nothing too crazy, but an interesting attack nonetheless. Got some new items here we've already seen, but we do, of course, have one new item we haven't seen yet, and that is the final ACE SPEC to be revealed. Honestly, it's a pretty good card. It's basically a buffed choice belt for EX Pokemon. So attacks used by the Pokemon this card is attached to do 50 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. So pretty cool stuff. Getting to do 50 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon is kind of sick, and I'm pretty sure, yeah, opponent's active EX, yeah, that's what, yeah, active Pokemon EX. Doing 50 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon EX is really, really cool. I like this card a lot. I mean, it's a very strong card. It can actually compete with Prime Catcher. There is validity, sorry, to playing this card because being able to do 50 damage free to an EX is kind of insane. That 50 extra damage you can do is really, really good. I mean, that Torterra we just looked at where it does 180 damage for 1 energy, all of a sudden can do plus 50 more damage. And then you're hitting even higher numbers and you're doing, what, 230 or something? So definitely a really interesting card. I think that it's actually worth playing in some decks. I think some decks that lack the damage output honestly can get away with playing this. I think that Maximum Belt is a pretty cool card. Now, again, it's only on EX Pokemon, but, I mean, for the most part, if you're going to want to do extra damage nowadays anyways, a lot of the time, you want to be doing more damage to EXs. You know, there's some EXs like Charizard that have 330 HP. They're really hard to knock out, but now we have Maximum Belt. Honestly, this might be the tool card and the ACE SPEC that Charizard's going to like to play nowadays. I think Charizard rotation might want to play Maximum Belt, because now all of a sudden Charizard does even more dangerous numbers when you've taken prizes. So there is some validity to this card. I think this Maximum Belt card is pretty good, and well, I don't think it's just like technically as good as Prime Catcher. There's a lot of value you get right now in doing 50 more damage to an EX Pokemon, so I think Maximum Belt's actually pretty strong, and honestly, I think they did a good job showing this last ACE SPEC here. Is it as good as Prime Catcher? Will it see more play than Prime Catcher? Even will it see more play than like Reboot Bot? Maybe. Maybe more play than Reboot Bot. Maybe not as much play as Prime Catcher, but definitely is a card to be considered when building decks nowadays. Especially if you're maybe not hitting the right numbers that you want to be hitting against the X Pokemon. So there you go. And then we have a new Morty here. You may only discard if you discard another card from your hand. Draw a card feature your opponent's bench Pokemon. Not a bad draw card. I mean, if your opponent has 5 Pokemon on the bench, you can draw 5 cards. Not a terrible card. It's basically a... I don't even know if it's a worse Zinnia's Resolve, because Zinnia, you have to discard 2, but you can technically see 1 more card, because Zinnia lets you just draw a card for your opponent's active on top of their bench, all the Pokemon in play. So, I don't know, Morty's okay. It's not terrible by any means. Yeah, I don't mind it. I mean, if you're playing a deck that wants to discard cards from their hand, you could consider playing Morty. Is it better than playing, like, Research Iono, though? Is probably the question, because it's probably not that great compared to those 2 supporters, but it is an interesting one. It's like basically having Zinnia back in the format, essentially. We do have Dangerous Jungle here, the new Stadium card. During Pokemon Checkup, put 2 more damage counters on each poison Pokemon, except for Dark Pokemon. So, obviously, if you're playing a Dark deck, like against Charizard, for example, this won't work against Charizard, because of course it doesn't work against Charizard. Nothing works against Charizard. But this card is pretty good nonetheless if you play it with Brute Bonnet. So Brute Bonnet with Dangerous Jungle and Radiant Sneasler. I think that's an extra, what, 40 damage you're putting on poison Pokemon? That ain't bad at all. That's definitely an interesting effect here for sure. So could be a cool Stadium card. You know, Stadium Wars aren't really going too far right now because, I mean, we are losing Path with rotation, but it'll be nice to have this in the format. This card would have been really good in Cloth, by the way. Which, I mean, Cloth could still be a playable deck, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying the deck's gone, because the only problem with Cloth now is you can't use Electrode as an attacker, but you can, of course, use this within Cloth, so I don't know, we'll see. It does work with Brute Bonnet, and that is nice. It's like an extra 20 damage. It's like Verbank Laser at home, basically, right? That's kind of the way I've seen it. And that's that for the first set. Then we got Cyber Judge here. I don't think there's as many new cards in Cyber Judge to look at, but there are still some new ones nonetheless. We've already seen most of these. There's a new Breloom here, nothing too special, obviously. There is a new Sawsbuck here with an ability where once you're in turn, you may search your deck for a Stadium, reveal it, and put it in your hand. We haven't really had any, like, Stadium search cards in a while. I don't think there's really any great homes for this. This could have been cute, actually, if, like, Path still existed, to be honest. A free way to find Path is kind of busted. Kind of decent, to be honest. New Delmise, 80 damage. If you have any bench metal Pokemon, you do 80 more damage. So, it is a new grass attacker here. I mean, it could have been cool with, like, Cherim. Yeah, the new Delmise probably would have needed Cherim to be good. New Brambleghast is very interesting here. It's got the ability Weed Spirit. For each prize your opponent's taken, this thing gets plus 50 HP. I mean, if your opponent's taken 4 prizes, this thing gets plus 200 HP. If they've taken 5 prizes, you get plus 250 HP. That's pretty hilarious. Honestly, not a bad ability, and its attack ain't bad either. It does 80 damage. You flip a coin for each heads, it does 80 for each heads. It's just an incorrect translation here on Pokebeach. It does say on the card times 80. Now, this card could have been cute with Cherim if Cherim was still legal in the format. Unfortunately, Cherim's rotating. That would have been really cool to play with Brambleghast, but I guess you could play it with, like, I mean, I wouldn't bother with Baxcalibur. Maybe with, like, Zatu or something, because I guess Zatu works with it. Flipping a coin to do 80 damage for each heads isn't, you know, terrible either. The ability itself can carry it. I mean, in the later part of the game, this thing is as bulky as, like, basic EX Pokemon, which is kind of crazy. So, definitely a really cool card. Maybe you can play it with that new Giant Cape, too, to give it even more HP, and just give this Brambleghast an absurd amount of HP. That would be pretty funny. I've already seen this new Rabska. Of course, we've seen this. There's a new Macargo here with Lava Pools. Whenever your opponent's active Pokemon moves to the bench, that new active Pokemon is now burned. So, it's a cute little effect. I don't think it's anything too crazy. It could be a way to get free damage, like, on the opponent's Pokemon to, like, do more damage so it can soften something up to be KO'd. But I don't know how great it's really going to be honest. Like, it could work in decks that rely heavily on pivots, but I'm not too sure it's that great. But it could be an interesting card, nonetheless. New Victini, nothing too crazy here. We've looked at Incineroar, obviously. We've looked at the new Raichu. New Electivire here. It's got Short Circuit Knuckle. Does 40 damage. If your opponent has any water Pokemon in play, you do 120 more damage. So, you do 160 for a DT. Probably nothing too good. I mean, yeah, if they bench like a Lumineon, I guess, you know. But still, probably not worth playing, to be honest. I guess they can one-shot a Pidgeot. Can one-shot a Pidgeot with a double turbo if they have a fish in play, which I guess is okay. I don't know. It's probably nothing too crazy, though. New Mr. Mime here. Your opponent reveals their hand. You may use the effect of a supporter card you find there and use it as the effect of this attack. Could be cool for setting up the game. You know, you can play like 2 supporters in a turn, theoretically, to set up, but yeah, probably not going to be worth it. It's just the format's too slow for a card like that to be good, in my opinion. We got Ribombee here. Business Wages. 30 damage. If the defending Pokemon is knocked out during your next turn, take 2 more prizes. So, it's a cute effect, but unfortunately, in a meta where your opponent can just retreat or switch out of it, it's probably not going to work. There's like a Rapid Strike Marshadow that does something kind of similar to this, and it's still kind of the same thing where it's like, probably doesn't work. It's a really cool effect, though, and taking 2 prizes is pretty good. I mean, it's like Greed and VMAX almost, but unfortunately, it's just not going to get the job done. When your opponent can just play Switcher, they can just retreat and be like, oh, who cares? So, unfortunately, not great. New Drillbur here with an ability, Dig About. When you play it from your hand on your bench, you may search your deck for up to 3 basic fight energy and discard them. So, if you're playing Koraidon EX, here's a free way to get energy and play for Koraidon EX's ability. Other than that, I don't know if there's any other value for playing that ability. It is cute, though, nonetheless. And then there's a new Excadrill, pretty vanilla card, nothing too crazy. New Fortress here, nothing too crazy either. We've looked at the Scizor, obviously. We've looked at the Metang. A new Melmetal here, just 230 for 5 metal energy. Pretty funny stuff. There are a couple new cards here, like a new Licky Licky. I don't think the Licky Licky does anything too crazy, though. I don't think the translations are on Tone's Twitter. I do have the Twitter pulled up here to help us see what some stuff does. And I guess we can just read off what the rest does on the Twitter, I guess, here for Torn. So I'll leave a link down below to Torn's Twitter. You got Time. Put a Pokemon from your hand face down in front of you and tell your opponent's HP. If they guess the name of that Pokemon and then you reveal it, your opponent, you know, if they guess right, you draw 4 cards. If they guess wrong, you draw 4 cards. Basically, just like a worse, like, it's like Blaine's Quiz Show. It's not a very playable supporter, though. Like, I don't think this supporter is very playable. Like, if you're playing against a meta deck, you can be like, 70 HP Pokemon, what could it be? Well, it's Charmander. Oh, look at that, you got it right. Oh, look at that, draw 4 free cards. Yeah, not very good, obviously. Because, like, yeah, you're never going to want to do that, obviously. Could be cool with, like, a Pokemon that relies heavily on your opponent having items in their hand to do damage, like Bayonet EX, I guess. Yeah, he's revealed Torterra. We've already seen that. Yeah, the new Melmetal, nothing too crazy. New Heavy Baton item card here. New tool. If the Pokemon this card is attached to is your active Pokemon, has a retreat cost of exactly 4 and is knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack, move up to 3 basic energy from that Pokemon to your bench Pokemon in any way that you like. So this could be really annoying to have with Iron Hands EX. So if Iron Hands gets knocked out, you can move 3 basic energy to your bench Pokemon, which is pretty insane. I mean, this could be very good within Miraidon. So if you're playing against Charizard, for example, and they don't Lost Vacuum you with Baton on, right? You go Hands, take 2 prizes. They go Charizard, knock out your Iron Hands. With Baton on, it makes it really easy to pull off a Raichu play, especially because Miraidon loses Flaffy. But if you have like a beach court in play, it cancels it out, which is kind of funny. It's not the greatest card ever. It is interesting, though, nonetheless. There could be some merit to this. There might be other Pokemon in the format that I'm not thinking of that this card also could be good with that have a full retreat cost. It is an interesting tool, nonetheless, so, I don't know, definitely keep your eye on it. I mean, Wishful Baton used to be a card from back in the day that saw some play, so maybe this could be like a similar success story there. We've seen the Victini, the Colossal, obviously. We've seen the Dangerous Jungle, all this, Frostmoth. Now, this card is very interesting. Salvatore. Search your deck for a card that doesn't have an ability and that evolves from one of your Pokemon in play and put it onto that Pokemon to evolve it. Then, you can use this card on a Pokemon that was put into play this turn. That's pretty insane. So this is basically like a nerfed Wally, which, yeah, this is kind of crazy. Now, it doesn't obviously work with like certain Pokemon like Lugia and Arceus V-Star that specifically do have abilities, but some cards this does work with. Like there's Bayonet EX. You could play this with Bayonet EX and get a turn 1 item lock off. There's a lot of value in that, especially against, Charizard EX. You could also use this with that new Bronzong we looked at where it prevents your opponent from evolving. So yeah, I think this card is kind of insane, actually. This is a pretty interesting card, and there might be more Pokemon in the format this works with, and even as time goes on, maybe as we get more cards revealed, this card could get even better. Yeah, this is a really interesting card. I'm kind of surprised they, like, printed a new version of Wally, because I think that Wally's definitely a card that I don't think... I mean, it did get unbanned recently, or like, well, not recently, but it did eventually get unbanned because Wally did get banned a long time ago, but then got unbanned. So I'm surprised they like kind of reprinted Wally a little bit. Obviously nerfed because you're not gonna be able to put like V-Stars into play as easily. You can, ironically enough, this would have been very good with Mirage Step Curly if that still existed in our format by the time this card came out. So rip Gardevoir, yeah, that'd have been insane to play with Mirage Step. But I don't know, it's an interesting card. Yeah, turn 1 Bayonet item lock could be a thing now. That's definitely an interesting card to keep in mind. Turn 1 item lock. We've seen the Maximum Belt, obviously. We've seen the Cinccino, seen that. I think we've seen most of these new cards. New Drampa here. If each of your bench Pokemon have any damage counters on them, this attack can do 220 damage for 3 energy. Nothing too crazy. New Unpheasant here. You may put 2 energy from your opponent's active Pokemon back into their hand. So that could be annoying when, Charizard, you can put their energy back in their hand. You're not removing the energy from play, though, so it's like they can still, like, attach it, but it's cute. Nothing too crazy, though. Now, this new Pidove has a very interesting text on it. Once you're in turn, if this Pokemon has 30 HP or less remaining, search your deck for an Unpheasant and put it onto this Pokemon to evolve it. Now, notice how it says including Unpheasant EX. Now, there is no Unpheasant EX in this set. But did this card just secretly confirm that we're going to be getting an Unpheasant EX soon? Yo. Now, keep in mind, you can play Gapejaw Bog, bench the Pidove with the Gapejaw Bog in play, and then get the Unpheasant in play. So there you go. That's a cool combo right there, yo. This Pidove's kind of cute, not going to lie. I don't think there's any, like, Unpheasants in Expanded this could be good with, but, yo, if we actually get an Unpheasant EX, I mean... Bro, it literally says. I feel like they're going to give us one now. We've seen this entire set. There's going to be another set in Japan coming out that will also be a part of Temporal Forces, so there's still another set in Japan we have yet to see, and maybe that has an Unpheasant EX in it, because, like, why else would they say that? You know what I mean? That's just, it's a little sus. But here's what the new Licky Licky does. Your opponent reveals their hand, choose up the 2 base Pokemon you find there, put them on their bench, and then, I guess the new Licky Licky, the new Licky Licky didn't get revealed, or didn't get translated, actually. I lied. Huh. Thought it did. All right, we got a new stadium full of Metal Lab. All metal Pokemon, both yours and your opponent's, take 30 less damage from attacks from your opponent's Pokemon. So it gives metal Pokemon a bit of bulk. Could be cool, or yeah, it could be cool with Dialga V-Star, of course. Yeah, it could be kind of cute, cool with Dialga. Giving Dialga a bit more bulk could be pretty nice. It might be nice against like Charizard. Yeah, I don't know. It's a cool stadium. No other big metal Pokemon out there except for really just Dialga, to be honest. But it's cool. It's cute. We've seen the Morty already, and I think that's it. Yeah, that's it for all of these new cards. I mean, I guess we don't know what the Delcatty does. I'm pretty sure, like, the Delcatty and Licky Licky aren't going to be doing anything too crazy, so I don't think we're losing out on anything by not knowing what those cards exactly do. But there are some interesting cards that did get revealed here. The one thing that I'm very interested about is Salvatore. This is definitely a supporter card that I'm surprised Pokemon decided to print, because it is obviously a weaker Wally, but having a new Wally in the format is definitely pretty interesting nonetheless. But yeah, there you have, folks. Again, nothing too crazy got revealed because, again, we've seen most of the crazy cards already from the new set. We got a new Torterra EX, which looks pretty cool. The new Maximum Belt is a nice ACE SPEC. I think this ACE SPEC might actually see a little bit of play because I think it is a very strong card. Again, being able to do 50 more damage to EX Pokemon is pretty good. So I'm definitely hyped on that. Let me know what you think of these new cards down below. Will you be rocking the Maximum Belt over Prime Catcher? I'm interested to hear that. And thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed, leave a like. I'll leave a link down below to PokeBeach and Twone's Twitter so you can go check out all these cards yourself. And I'll see you all in another video. Bye-bye.